Hi all, Rulof here. I thought instead of arranging a live session, I would just quickly record this for you so that you can watch this in your own time. This is basically in response to the dummy client profile that I got from Chris. And so I've customized just the trial version of CRM to also cater for all of these fields that you've got on your client profiles at the moment. So I've replicated most of this top section up here, and then down here the meetings sections. While that's not in our client profile per se, that obviously forms part of the standard communications entity within CRM. So any new meetings arranged with a customer will be recorded as such, and that details of those meetings can be recorded in the communications record itself. And then obviously there was quite a bit of customization done on this ANL tab over here. So, but let me show you what that would typically look like in Sage CRM. So there was the discussion of perhaps keeping it within Excel. I think that was your initial idea, but the purpose of this is just to show you how easy it is to actually introduce those custom entities within CRM. So to begin with, I'm just quickly going to show you the client profile itself, so capturing a new company record. So when we go into CRM, you might recall that within CRM we actually talked about new companies, and each company will have a contact person. Now to begin with, I've actually renamed that to new client. So the company entity is now called the client entity. So we can go ahead and create a new client over there. And that would now take me to the deduplication screen, which will basically just do a quick check in the database, making sure that I'm not capturing a duplicate client. So here I'll just typically say something like, let's go with that Johnson, Shane and Sarah is maybe my client, and I'm going to go ahead and click the enter company details. CRM will do a check in the database. It did not find any duplicates in the database, and as such it brought me to the capture screen. Now the type field that you see over here, that's a standard CRM field. This could also be customized. Actually, I thought that would be useful for you to indicate whether it's a family or an individual or maybe a company, what type of client it is. For now, let's just leave it at customer. And then this family status is one of the fields that I saw on your dummy profile. And so as such, I just basically added these two options. Obviously, there will be a lot more in your actual field. So that would then typically be a selection field. And then the time horizon, I saw there was just a value entered in here. It looks like this would typically be a selection field as well. Otherwise, I just made it a text field for now. So in here you have 20 years jointly. So let's go and put something like that. So this might remain a text field as well. Then we've got this liquidity needs, and once again, it's a bit difficult to determine whether this is selection list, but this seems like a typical selection field where we've got the low, medium and high, or low, normal and high. So I'm just going to make that low over here. And there's a constraints field. This is a multi-line text fields, and as you can see, you can type a couple of lines in there. The same goes for laws and regulations, unique circumstances, taxes, and then we've got the investment product section down here. Once again, we can enter knowledge and experience, income needs, and the risk profile. Once again, a selection list, low, medium, and high. And let's go with that. And these are then standard fields down here. So this is just where did we get this client from, what's the source of this client, and we can expand on this list obviously if you want to add more entries in there. The status of this client. This field could potentially be defaulted depending on whether you want to go with a company workflow. So if you are going to opt for a company workflow where you want to maybe just go through a workflow process before you onboard any of your customers, then the status column would then be a read-only field, and the status of a client would be determined by the workflow then. And territory, I think we touched on that in the demo meeting. It's basically just if we have different branches to begin with, we normally just start with a top level entity called worldwide, or it could even be called your company name. The account manager then is just the person. By default, it will be the person capturing this client, but there could be rules built in there as well to default to a specific person, or I can change that to any other CRM user as well. let me just change that back to the system administrator, and then we've got an address information down here. And when we scroll down a bit further, you'll see there's the contact person details. So I've also made a couple of changes in this screen as well. So let's go ahead and capture Shane Johnson, then being the one of these members. His title, there's a gender field. I don't think this was on your form, but this is a standard CRM field. His ID number, and then the job status, that's one of your fields. The date of birth, I said the 7th of October 1978. There could be some validation rules built into this as well. So obviously you are prompting for both the ID number as well as the date of birth. We could potentially validate the ID number to make sure that that actually corresponds to the date of birth. And we also have the validations on ID numbers in general for that control digit right at the end to make sure that this is an actual valid ID number. Okay, so that's basically just a contact person. And then the type of contact person, we've changed that. We've had quite a bit of other options here, obviously, but here you can now go and indicate whether this is the main member and or the husband or the wife. So you can actually indicate the type of contact person that you have. Obviously, other options that could come in here is maybe some other relative or a child or something like that. Okay, so that's then the changes that I made on the client profile itself. First of all, like I said, we've renamed the company entity to client, and all of your custom fields that's going in there as well. And obviously you can add some mobile numbers and email addresses in there as well. I'm just going to go ahead and save this because I want to get to the other side of this as well. Now, once I've saved my company record or my client record, I see it's still saying company over there. We can just rename that to client as well. You'll see that all the tabs we have across at the top here, those are relevant to the company that I'm looking at, or the client record that I'm looking at the moment. So when I click on people, I expect to see all the contact persons associated with this company. And as you can see, there's Mr. Shane Johnson that I've captured just now. One thing that I've added for you is a dynamically calculated field. So you don't have to enter the age. Obviously, if you manually enter that, and that would have been the case with Excel, that you had to update this every year, obviously manually. But this would then auto-calculate, so we can show you the age on this screen based obviously on their date of birth. So there's the age and what type of contact person this is as well. Now you can go and update the date of birth or any of this information by clicking on the person's name. And just note the icon to the top left, that will now change to the person's icon. And you'll see I'm now looking at the person, Shane Johnson, not at his client record. But here I can now click the change button, go make some changes on his ID number or maybe his date of birth or any of that information that we've entered before. I'm just going to click on the client record again on Johnson, Shane and Sarah. And obviously you would want to probably go and add Sarah, his wife, in here as another member. But what I want to show you then is the portfolio tab. Now that's just what I called it, and I'm most probably wrong with my terminology, so please excuse that. But as for the portfolio, I've created this entity called policies. Now also I doubt if policy is the right word. You probably want to refer to it as products, or maybe a fund or assets, so we could name that any of those. I just called it a policy for the purpose of this exercise here. So currently they've got no policies in their portfolio, and I can now go ahead and click new to create a new policy or fund for this Johnson, Shane and Sarah client. And you can give it some name. Now I'm just going to take some of the names that you've given me in that dummy profile. And let's go with that, and let's give it a value over there. So this is obviously a currency value. This CRM system that you're looking at the moment is a setup for multi-currency, and that's why it's showing me all these different currencies. I assume that we are going to have a single currency system with you, in which case it won't present you with this. We can always at a later stage change it into a multi-currency system. Then I've entered this value as at date stamp. so that we can actually record the value at a specific date, and that would be important for reporting purposes. So just looking at the tab over here, I can see that there was a specific date that you want to obviously report on. Now we've got lots of options available for us, but I thought it'd be important to actually be able to pinpoint the date and time of the fund's value at a specific date and time. And as we progress and that value updates and we update it in CRM, we have date and time stamps of those as well. So with reporting, we can then give you something like this as well to tell you how it escalated or grew over a period of time. Alright, so the user, that's basically just the user capturing this policy or this fund. I don't know if you have specific people looking at specific funds, and you could potentially assign that to that user, or maybe even to a team if you want to. And then down here we've got those asset allocations as you had in your Excel spreadsheets as well. And these then being percentages. So you could typically go, I've already entered some details in there, and it's just Google Chrome showing me those options that I've entered earlier in here. And I believe we've got 0 and a 0 and maybe a 4 down there. Okay, so that's just distributing it. Obviously, this should add up to 100. Now, I haven't built in those kind of rules in this demo system, but that's typically something that we can do, is to ensure that you that this always adds up to 100%, and that you don't add more than that. So we could potentially put a field up here to show you how much is left. So in this case, if I've deleted that, it could potentially tell me that you still have 30% that you need to allocate. So those are the things that we can very easily build into these screens as well. At the moment, it's very manual, the way that it is built at the moment. Alright, so but there we've got those asset allocations, and I can now go ahead and save it. Now we see there's an opportunity as well. So the assumption is obviously that we want to go through a sales cycle with some of these funds. So an opportunity or a sales deal might then end up as a policy, and this is just a way of linking an opportunity to a specific fund or policy or product. But for this purpose, I'm not going to actually enter anything in there, and I'm going to go ahead and click save, and that would now create my first policy record according to my system, the way that I've created it. You'll see there's an icon there indicating a policy, the policy summary. Like I said, this could be called fund or asset or product or whatever you want to call it, with all the tabs up here. And the policy record in itself then also have a communications tab. So if we had to communicate with them regarding the specific policy, we can record those as communications. If there was a complaint or any inquiries logged for the specific fund, we can log that under cases. When I do create a case underneath the specific policy, that would also roll up to both the person record that logged it as well as to the client level. So I'll be able to see that case record on all those different levels. We can upload specific documentation, and I guess that would be very relevant, especially for these kind of records, policies and funds. You can upload some documents, and there's a tracking tab showing me when did we create it, and if there's a workflow later on, if you decide to have some kind of a workflow, which you might want to do because you want to be able to update the value, obviously, and that would then typically be a workflow action to say update the value, and that would then present you with both the value and the date field, so that you can update that and we can record the different values as time progresses. Okay, but if I now go back into the client profile itself, click on Johnson, Shane and Sarah, the client name, and we now go and click on the portfolio tab, you would see that we've got the one policy found there, and there we go. We've added a calculated field in here, so it's just, and I know that was one thing that you were specifically asking for, is the allocation in terms of the different policies as well. Now, obviously, they only have this one policy, so that is then taking up 100% of their portfolio. And obviously, when I now go and create a second one, let's add some values in here. Actually, I want to see here, you said equity 60 and 40 on cash. There we go, and we can now go ahead and save this one as well. So there's my second portfolio. Going back to the client record, I would now look at the portfolio tab, and I would see that that has now been distributed. So it's now 68% for that offshore, and then the Centaur UT product or asset or fund or policy, whatever you call it, is then 32%. And then the value as at date will, because it's today's date, it's going to say to date, but tomorrow obviously it will just give me the actual proper date format, saying the 27th of October in this case. Okay, so I think that was pretty much everything that I wanted to show you here. Obviously, creating more portfolios, you can click the new button over there, or you can click the new button to the top right, and there's a new policy button in there as well. And there we have a custom entity built into CRM, and then you don't have to maintain this information in the Excel spreadsheets. Sorry, another thing that I had to just mention, I assume that obviously this would be some kind of report that you want to send out to your customers, maybe every couple of years or quarterly, I think I saw somewhere. So what we can do is, this is a bit too complex for the standard built-in CRM report engine, but what we do in that cases then is we also install what is called SQL Server Reporting Services, or SSRS, which is a free add-on to SQL, the database, even if we are using the free version of SQL. So that's a free tool. It's like a lightweight BI tool that comes with SQL, and we would then typically just use SSRS to build these kind of reports. So this is ideal for SSRS, you know, this kind of setup where you want to break it down into different dates, and you can maybe specify a from date and a to date on the report, and it would actually render it in exactly this format. So on a CRM side, to capture this information, you saw now that you can capture all of this information, so all of that is there. But as for a reporting purpose, there we would just utilize the SSRS tool, and that could then potentially give you this kind of reports quickly and easily. And you can then also decide if you want it in PDF or Excel or whatever format. Right, I think that is pretty much everything. If you do have any questions, further questions, you're welcome to pop me a mail. If you still want to have a live session on this as well, please let me know. I am available so that we can do that. But otherwise, have a look at this and let me know what you think of it.